Okay. Scene 1, take 1. Or scene 1, take 2. Hi, Miss Austin. This is Mia. I'm not sure if you recognize my face because I don't usually have my camera on in class, but this is my third DIR for my book that I've chosen, which is The Phantom of the Opera by Gaston Leroux. I chose this book because it's a classic that I've always wanted to read but never got a chance to. But now that I have like a class opportunity to do it, I wanted to jump on it. And so I just want to talk about what I've been doing with the book, how I've been reading it, annotations I've made, and then basically I've broken up the videos into 7 parts. The first 5 videos are going to, or the first 3 videos are sort of going to be chapter breakdowns of what I read so far. So they're going to be around 20 minutes, and then the first 4 videos are going to be around 20 minutes, and then the last 2 videos are going to be analysis, commentary, themes and morals of the story and stuff like that when I get to it. But the first 4 videos are going to be 20 minutes, and then the last 2 are going to be 10 minutes to hit my 2-hour requirement. And so this first video is focusing on chapters 1 through 5. I've made annotations, and I just want to talk about how I've been sort of marking those down so far. So for annotations, I've been color coordinating all the tabs that you see right here. For this bright blue, I wanted to talk about relationships / love or romance that happens throughout the novel. I know very vaguely about who the main 2 protagonists are. I don't know what happens to them, but I know it's Phantom of the Opera and the main female protagonist, Christine. They sort of have this love affair / not love affair, because I don't think Christine ends up with Phantom of the Opera, but I don't know for sure. But I just want to explore relationships through the blue tab. I haven't used it. Oh, I have. I've used it very late, I believe, in chapter 5, so that comes later. And then yellow is for description / info. I know the opera house is an actual place, it's a real place, and apparently the setting and basically the basement that has like a river running through it, that's real. And there's like special like location context or historical context that I don't really quite understand, and so for things that sort of need elaboration, I've put a yellow tab on it so I can either look it up later or I just like write a little more information in the book. For this purple color, I put down voice and music and quotes. Because it's centered around the opera house, obviously there's a lot of music. It talks about a lot of composers. It talks about sound. It talks about vibrance of voices or like the cadence. And I just kind of wanted to note on those because I think they're really interesting, and it makes the book like more in depth, because it's not just touch and go on the topic of music. They really go in depth in terms of describing sound and performance. And it's also the same color for quotes that I want to remember, quotes that are profound, or quotes that I just want to note that like foreshadow events that may happen later on. For green, it's political commentary. For chapters 1 through 5, I have not run into that so far, but I do know that like watching other people's review of Phantom of the Opera without spoilers, there was some reviewers that talked about it, and so I did want to note on those if I ever ran into them, but I have not ran into any so far. For orange, is for characters, either new characters that just got introduced or descriptions of the characters themselves, especially the main characters that I want to remember, or the ones that aren't really background characters. For teal, I put supernatural Eric or ghost Eric. Basically, before reading Phantom of the Opera, or before starting to read it, I thought that the main character, Phantom of the Opera, was an actual ghost. And the book does talk about Eric as a ghost for at least a duration of 1 through 5. And chapter 5 is when we start to realize that there's a more concrete person to Eric than just sort of what the superstition around his ghostly figure is. And I wanted to just jot down all the areas where it talks about Eric as if he's a ghost, or actions that he does are ghostly, like when he appears or disappears, when he like shows up in shadows, clothed in darkness, stuff like that. And then for bright pink is tabbed where it's sort of like a crime novel, basically. Because this is Phantom of the Opera is like this crime investigative book because it's investigating the Phantom of the Opera, and it's sort of this romance that develops between the Phantom and the main female protagonist. And some reviewers say it's kind of funny, so it could be a comedic book if you want to look at it from that perspective. I haven't ran into any comedy yet, or I haven't laughed with this book yet, but maybe I'll add a new tab for comedy. But yeah, even the prologue starts with this sort of rundown of what's happening. Like it talks about, like, the first line, I marked it for Supernatural Eric, which is in the teal color. The Phantom of the Opera did exist. And I just thought, I don't know why, but I just thought that was really profound because it's establishing right off the mark he does exist. And then it goes on to say how he's a ghost, basically. Or we suspect that he's a ghost. And he basically is up until chapter 5. But I was really confused with the narrator at the beginning of this because it's not Gaston Leroux. He's not a character in the book, but it seems like we're being narrated from somebody who's not quite in the inner circle of the opera house. Like, it's not a ballerina that talks about it. It's not from Christine's perspective, or it's not from the Phantom's perspective. It's from this outsider who's not the author. So it's not in third person, it's in first person. Because it has like I and all that. And basically the narrator, I suspect, is the detective or the investigator of the Phantom of the Opera, because there are snippets of text and stuff from this sort of journal slash lines. And see, here it says, in this respect, allow me to reproduce some of the lines that were sent to me by General D. And it's snippets of like descriptions that seem from a journal or from a file that they've collected around the information of the Phantom. And so it makes me think that this narrator has a hand in investigating, and he's the investigator around sort of the mystery of the Phantom. And so chapters 1 through 5, I have a computer here so I know what points to hit. In chapters 1 through 5, basically what's happening so far, the two directors of the opera, I'm gonna call them Monsieur D and Monsieur P, because French names are hard to pronounce. And they're kind of important, but they sort of get off later. And they're retiring, and so there's this gala / last performance, sort of in honor of their retirement. And all the ballerinas are gathered, and we meet one of the main ballerinas, who's not the main character. Her name is Sorelli. And we meet Sorelli, we meet little James, and basically it starts out in her dressing room where they talk about the existence of the Phantom. They talk about his ghostly figure, all of the activity that's happening around the opera house, and they talk about one of the characters. His name is Joseph Bouquet. He's a chief stage machinist. He actually came face to face with the Phantom, and he is able to describe his character very accurately. Or the ballerinas don't know it's accurate, but the readers can guess it's pretty accurate because he actually gets killed later on, and the readers can probably predict that it's because he knows too much about the Phantom. And so chapter 1, there's already a death. And so we know that the Phantom values his identity, values his appearance. He doesn't like when people see him or describe him, and the readers can probably predict that it's because he's probably pretty ugly or deformed in a way that he's insecure about. And so the girls discover he has died, and now they're talking about him further developed than a ghost, because one of the other characters, her mom works in box number 5, which is the Phantom's box. And this is sort of the seat reserved for the Phantom for when he wants to watch performances. And the two, Monsieur D and Monsieur P, know to reserve the box for the Phantom, because they've sort of come to this agreement to where they will appease the Phantom for their own safety. And so the two now retiring directors know that. And then, so when the new directors come in, there's going to be a little bit of a trouble. But here they talk about how box 5 is basically the ghost's box, and then they're sort of coming from the performance. And so now we meet in chapter 2, which is where there's the first mention of Christine. Christine is the main female protagonist, and Christine sort of goes through this transformation, not through chapter 2, but like sort of in the background, where she wasn't a great performer at first, but then in chapter 2, returning from the performance, one of the characters, his name is Count de Cheny, something like that. He actually has a relationship with Sorelli, but that's a little bit later. He comes back and he's basically praising Christine's performance, and the girls are sort of surprised because Christine wasn't a great singer in the beginning, and she's sort of basically the crowd goes wild for Christine because she's improved so much, and she has this quote seraphic voice or angel-like voice, and the crowd is super wooed, the girls are surprised, and now we're introduced to the Count de Cheny. His name is Felipe or Philip, something like that. He has a relationship with Sorelli, but his little brother Raoul has a relationship with Christine. It's unclear right now, but I'm pretty sure they do. But Christine says she does not recognize him when they get back to her dressing room. We're at the point where the Count and his brother Raoul are in the opera house after the performance. Christine has just gotten off stage. She gave a brilliant performance, and she collapses. And Raoul, who probably has an attraction to Christine, rushes to her dressing room to see if she's okay. And when he gets there, he sort of listens in. Or no, he approaches Christine. She wakes up. She feels fine. And says, like, "Do you recognize me?" And she says no. And he's sort of taken aback, because apparently he's adamant that they know each other. And when he comes out of the dressing room, he basically overhears a male voice in Christine's dressing room. And this is Eric. This is the Phantom of the Opera. And Raoul sort of hears them speaking, and basically, and it's on page 29 in the second chapter, it says, "Christine, you must love me." Christine, as if in tears, replied with a pain-trembling voice, "How can you say that? I sing only for you." And basically, I've assumed up to this point it's been Eric who's been training Christine to be such a great singer. And I sort of infer that Christine is sort of his muse, sort of the figure that he shaped into such an angelic singer. And it's bordering on an obsession from what I hear, because he's like, "Oh, Christine, you must love me. I must keep you." And he watches all the performances that she gives in his reserve box and stuff like that. And Raoul doesn't like the fact that there's another man in her dressing room and she's rejecting his affections. And so later we meet the new directors, and I believe their name is Richard and Moncharmin, something like that. They're the new directors of the opera, and on page 36 there's a snippet from like this memoir where it talks about how the old directors were sort of talking to the new directors about what runs in the opera house, and the Phantom has certain demands that he requires. And so let's see if I can find it. The Phantom, there's an allowance for the Phantom. The allowance allowed to the Phantom of the Opera is set until further notice at 20,000 francs per month. That is 240,000 francs per year. And he requires this allowance. He also requires the box 5 in the theater or the opera to be reserved only for him. And basically the new managers think this is a joke from the former directors, and later on when there's a performance, somebody tells the directors that there is somebody in the box, or the directors get it. Directors basically rent out the box because they don't believe that it's reserved. It should be reserved for the Phantom. They think it's a joke, and so the new directors, Richard and Moncharmin, they rent out the box, and obviously there's people that occupy the box now. And after the performance where it's an occupied box, they get a note from the Phantom of the Opera, and it's in like these red ink, like chicken scratch handwriting, and it basically is the opera telling directors, oh, I assumed you guys, I'll let this slide because I assume the old managers did not tell you guys to reserve the box for me, but this box is mine. And then he says that he's mailed the directors, and they tell him that they have informed the new directors to reserve the box for him, and so the Phantom now knows they intentionally rented out the box. Not happy. And he also requires his allowance. And he basically signs off P of the opera, so he knows his reputation, obviously. And the directors think this is this big old joke again, and it's being taken a little too far, and they're not happy. And so in his letter, I wrote a little note. He also talks about how great Christine is and how she should get more roles. And so the directors also know that the Phantom has this certain an attention for Christine, and there's also a note on that. And so now we're on chapter 5, continuation of box 5. The new directors still have failed to meet the requirements of the Phantom, and obviously Eric is not happy. It's sort of this guideline to appease him, and they're not following it. And so in chapter 5, this character, his name is Isidore Sack, he has his legs broken by the ghost, and Madame Gurry, which is Meg's mom, that sort of runs, that sort of attends to box 5. She knows the Phantom, and she knows why he's upset. And it's revealed that she's never actually seen him face to face, they've had interactions before to where the Phantom tips her or leaves nice things for her. And on one occasion, she notes that he's had company to where his company, we assume is Christine, left her fan, and it was gone the next day or something like that. And that's basically the end of chapter 5. So we sort of get a little more in depth about his character, how he treats or his interactions with Madame Gray. And chapter 6 is titled The Magic Fiddle. I've not gotten to that yet. but I will. And so far, it's interesting. It's not slow. Excuse me. So far, it's interesting. It's not slow paced at all. We've had a murder and broken leg injury. There we go. Injury already, and we sort of already met the female protagonist, the villain, which is the Phantom, and the love interest of the female protagonist, Raoul. Predictions so far, I don't have very many. Just that Christine is sort of under the Phantom's thumb as sort of his apprentice and muse, and so she kind of depends on him for her success, or because she's successful, it's because of him. And so he sort of shaped who she is, and so I think they have sort of this push and pull relationship, especially with the Phantom that wants her to love him. And then Raoul steps in, and Raoul doesn't like the fact that there is a male interacting with Christine, and I predict that he's probably gonna come in and sort of sweep Christine off her feet, because Christine obviously does not want to be stuck with the Phantom. She says that I already sing for you, isn't that enough? Why do you need my affections? That sort of thing. And I predict she's probably going to go to Raoul, sort of to confront him, or to maybe form a bond that will sever the bond that she has with the Phantom, and maybe Raoul gets killed because the Phantom doesn't like that, but we don't know yet. But so far I'm enjoying the book. That is all for chapters 1 through 5. Basically it was an introduction of my annotations, what's happened so far from what I understood. I skipped around a lot. I apologize for that, but I think I understand what's going on so far. And the next video would be for chapters 6 through 10. And so that's it. Cut.